The hospital hallway smelled like bleach and broken promises. I stood there, my hands shaking, holding the ultrasound picture that showed nothing but an empty space where our baby should have been. The miscarriage had happened 3 hours ago, and I was still bleeding, still cramping, still falling apart from the inside out. I called my husband Derek from the hospital bathroom, my voice barely a whisper. "Derek, please come. I lost the baby. I need you." There was a pause. Then I heard it. Laughter. Not a chuckle, not a nervous laugh, but full, loud laughter that echoed through the phone like a slap across my face. "Are you serious right now, Maya? I'm in the middle of a poker game with the guys. Can't this wait until tomorrow?" My chest felt hollow. Our baby just died. "Look, these things happen. You're being dramatic. Take an Uber home and we'll talk later." More laughter in the background. "Guys, my wife's having a meltdown over nothing." The line went dead. I slid down the bathroom wall, the cold tiles pressing against my back, and I made myself a promise through the tears. He would regret this moment for the rest of his life. 2 days after the miscarriage, I sat across from Patricia Thornton, the best divorce attorney in Seattle. My sister Jade had recommended her, calling her a shark in designer heels. Patricia didn't smile as she reviewed my notes. "Your husband laughed when you miscarried?" She looked up, her eyes sharp. "He did. And he's been controlling your finances for how long?" 5 years since we got married." Patricia leaned forward. "Maya, I need you to understand something. Washington is a community property state. Everything earned during the marriage is split 50-50, but there are exceptions for cruelty and financial abuse. We're going to document everything." I nodded, my hands steady for the first time in days. "There's something else," Patricia said, sliding a folder across the desk. "I had my investigator do preliminary research on Derek. Your husband has been very busy." Inside were photos. Derek with a woman at a restaurant. Derek leaving a hotel. Derek kissing someone who wasn't me. The woman was his assistant, Vanessa. They'd been together for 8 months. My voice shook when I spoke. "How long have you known?" "Since yesterday. I'm sorry, Maya." I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. I became a ghost in my own home, invisible and watching. Derek didn't notice the change because he'd never really seen me to begin with. Every morning he left for his tech company at 7. Every evening he came home at 9, smelling like her perfume. I started documenting everything. I found the secret credit card statements he'd hidden in his office, showing expensive jewelry, hotel rooms, and restaurant bills, gifts for Vanessa, dates with Vanessa, a whole life with Vanessa, all paid for with our money. I photographed every receipt. I recorded every conversation where he dismissed my pain or mocked my emotions. Washington is a 2-party consent state, but there are exceptions for documenting abuse. Patricia had explained the legal boundaries carefully. One night, Derek came home drunk, bragging on the phone to his brother about how stupid I was. "She has no idea, man. She thinks I'm working late." Meanwhile, I'm planning to leave her broke and move Vanessa into a penthouse downtown. The prenup's ironclad, or at least she thinks it is. I whispered into my own phone, recording every word. Patricia called me 3 weeks into our preparation, with news that made my heart race. "The prenup is invalid, Maya." "What? How?" Derek's lawyer failed to follow Washington state law. You're required to have independent legal representation when signing a prenuptial agreement. Derek's lawyer represented both of you, which is a massive conflict of interest. The entire document is unenforceable. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. So everything he said about me getting nothing was a lie he believed. The community property laws apply fully. His company, his stocks, his retirement accounts, you're entitled to half of everything accumulated during the marriage. And with the evidence of his affair and financial abuse, We might push for more. How much more? Patricia's smile was cold and beautiful. Let's just say Derek's going to learn a very expensive lesson about laughing at his wife's pain. That night, I slept peacefully, for the first time in a month. Derek announced he wanted to take me to dinner for our anniversary. 6 years of marriage. And suddenly he was being romantic. I knew what this meant. He was planning to ask for a divorce on our special day. Probably to twist the knife a little deeper. I wore the blue dress he'd always hated. The one that made me feel confident. I did my makeup carefully, not for him, but for me. I was going to remember this night. The restaurant was expensive, one of those places with tiny portions and pretentious descriptions. Derek ordered wine and smiled at me across the table like a predator playing with food. Maya, we need to talk. I know, I said softly. I've been thinking the same thing. He looked surprised, then pleased. You have. Our marriage isn't working. We both know it. Derek's smile widened. I'm glad you're being mature about this. I've already spoken to a lawyer. With the prenup, the process should be simple and quick. I took a sip of wine. Actually, Derek, I've spoken to a lawyer too. His smile faltered, just slightly, just enough. You did what? Derek's voice rose slightly before he controlled it, glancing around the restaurant. I hired Patricia Thornton. She's been very helpful in explaining my rights. Derek's face went pale, then red. Patricia Thornton? Maya, that woman is going to bill you thousands for nothing. The prenup is clear. You signed it. You get minimal support and none of my business assets. I leaned forward, my voice steady and clear. The prenup is invalid, Derek. You had your lawyer represent both of us, which violates state law. Every asset you accumulated during our marriage, including your precious company stocks, is community property. He gripped his wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. You're bluffing. I'm not, but there's more. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us. I know about Vanessa. The color drained from his face completely. I don't know what you're talking about. 8 months. Hotels, jewelry, romantic dinners, all on our credit cards. You weren't even smart enough to hide it properly. Derek's jaw clenched. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself from a cheating, emotionally abusive husband. My voice shook, but not from fear, from rage finally set free. You laughed when I miscarried our baby. You mocked me. You belittled me. And you thought I'd just take it forever. Maya, I'm done talking. See you in court. I stood up and walked out, leaving him sitting there with the bill and his shattered illusions. Derek's lawyer filed an aggressive response 3 days later, claiming I was making false accusations and demanding I drop the divorce or face a defamation lawsuit. It was a bullying tactic designed to scare me into submission. Patricia laughed when she read it. Amateur hour. Let's respond. Our counterfiling was a masterpiece. We included documentation of the affair, evidence of financial abuse, proof that Derek had been hiding assets, and a detailed account of his emotional cruelty, including the recorded conversation about the miscarriage. We also filed for a restraining order, citing his increasingly aggressive behavior. Derek had been sending me dozens of threatening texts since the dinner, calling me names I won't repeat, and promising to destroy me. The judge granted a temporary restraining order within 48 hours. Derek was forbidden from coming within 500 feet of me or contacting me except through lawyers. He violated it that same night, showing up at my sister's house, where I'd been staying, pounding on the door and screaming about how I'd ruined his life. I called the police. He spent the night in jail. Patricia called it a gift. Every violation helps our case, she said. He's showing his true character to the court. While Derek was self-destructing, I received an unexpected call from Marcus Chen, Derek's business partner in their tech startup. We'd met a few times at company parties but barely knew each other. Maya, I need to talk to you. It's about Derek. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Marcus looked nervous, his fingers drumming on the table. Derek's been embezzling from the company, he said, without preamble. I discovered it 2 weeks ago. He's been funneling money into a private account, probably to hide assets from the divorce. My heart raced. How much? Over $300,000. I pulled out my phone and called Patricia right there. You need to hear this. Marcus repeated everything to her, agreeing to provide documentation and testify if needed. He was furious, not just about the theft, but about Derek's betrayal of their friendship. He's been my best friend since college, Marcus said, his voice tight. We built this company together, and he's been stealing from me while sleeping with my girlfriend. I froze. Vanessa is your girlfriend? Was. I found out about the affair a month ago. I was going to confront him, but then you filed for divorce, and I realized maybe we could all help each other. The enemy of my enemy, I thought, is my ally. Derek's deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in Patricia's conference room. I wasn't required to be there, but I wanted to watch through the video feed from the next room. Derek walked in, wearing his most expensive suit, radiating false confidence. His lawyer, a silver-haired man named Robert Kane, tried to project authority. Patricia started gently, establishing basic facts about our marriage, his income, and our assets. Then she shifted. Mr. Winters, do you recall the evening of September 14th? I'd need more context. That was the night your wife called you from the hospital to inform you she'd had a miscarriage. Do you remember that call? Derek's face tightened. Vaguely. Do you remember laughing? I don't recall laughing. Patricia played the recording, my voice broken and desperate, begging him to come. His laughter, cruel and dismissive, his words about me being dramatic. The room went silent. Even Robert Kane looked disgusted. Mr. Winters, do you still maintain you don't recall laughing at your wife's miscarriage? Derek's voice came out strangled. It was taken out of context. What context makes laughing at a miscarriage appropriate? He had no answer. News of Derek's deposition leaked, as these things do in legal circles. A journalist friend of Patricia's wrote a carefully worded article about a local tech entrepreneur facing divorce allegations, including emotional abuse and infidelity. Derek's name wasn't mentioned directly, but enough details were included that anyone who knew us could connect the dots. The tech community in Seattle is smaller than people think. Derek's company started receiving negative attention. Clients began pulling contracts. Investors started asking questions. Marcus used the opportunity to call an emergency board meeting to address Derek's embezzlement. Derek was forced to step down as CEO within a week. The company he'd spent 10 years building was slipping through his fingers. He sent me one text before Patricia got it blocked. You're destroying everything I worked for. I didn't respond, but I thought, no, Derek. You destroyed it yourself when you chose cruelty over kindness, greed over love, and lies over truth. The board voted to pursue criminal charges for embezzlement. Derek now faced both divorce court and potential jail time. His perfect life was unraveling at a speed that would have felt satisfying if part of me didn't still remember loving him once. Derek's mother, Linda, showed up at my sister's house unannounced. Jade tried to turn her away, but I agreed to talk. We sat in the living room, tension thick between us. Maya, you need to drop this divorce, Linda said, her voice sharp. You're humiliating our family. Derek made a mistake, but you're being vindictive. I stared at her, amazed. A mistake? He laughed when I lost our baby. He cheated on me for 8 months. He stole from his own company. Men have needs. You were probably neglecting him. Something inside me snapped. I was grieving our dead child while he was sleeping with his assistant. And you're blaming me? Linda's face hardened. Derek said you'd turn hysterical. He warned me you were unstable. Then why are you here begging me to stop? If I'm so unstable and wrong, why are you scared? She stood up, clutching her purse. You'll regret this. Our family has connections. We'll make sure you get nothing. After she left, I called Patricia. Derek's family is threatening me. Good, Patricia said. Document everything. Their harassment only strengthens our case. Let them dig their own graves. I smiled grimly. They had no idea who they were dealing with anymore. Patricia brought in a forensic accountant named Dr. Sarah Bloom, a woman who looked like a librarian, but had the instincts of a bloodhound. She spent 3 weeks analyzing Derek's financial records. Her report was devastating. Derek had been hiding money for years, not just recently. He'd established offshore accounts, created shell companies, and transferred assets to family members to keep them out of community property. The total amount hidden was over $2 million. This is beyond typical divorce asset hiding, Dr. Bloom explained in Patricia's office. This is systematic financial fraud. He's been planning this for at least 2 years. My stomach turned. 2 years, but he didn't file for divorce until now. Exactly, Patricia said. He was preparing to leave you penniless long before the miscarriage. That event just accelerated his timeline. I thought about all the times Derek had convinced me we couldn't afford things I wanted. A better car, a vacation, classes I wanted to take. Meanwhile, he was stashing millions. Can we recover it? I asked. Dr. Bloom smiled. Every penny, and the court will not be pleased about his deception. Derek had been so confident in his plan, but he'd underestimated how thoroughly his lies could be uncovered. Vanessa agreed to testify, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She sat in the deposition room looking fragile, her confident assistant persona completely gone. Patricia approached her carefully, building rapport, before the hard questions came. How long were you involved with Mr. Winters? 8 months. Vanessa's voice was barely audible. Did he tell you he was married? Yes, but he said he was leaving his wife, that the marriage was dead. He said she was crazy and abusive, and he was only staying until he could safely leave. I watched through the video feed. My hands clenched. Derek had painted me as the villain. Did Mr. Winters spend money on you? Yes. He bought me jewelry, paid for trips, expensive dinners. He said he wanted me to feel special. Did you know this money came from joint marital accounts? Vanessa's face crumpled. No, I thought it was his money. He said his wife didn't work and contributed nothing. Patricia showed her bank statements. Mrs. Winters worked as a nurse for the first 3 years of their marriage, contributing over $60,000 annually to household expenses before Mr. Winters convinced her to quit. Vanessa started crying. He lied about everything. Derek's lawyer requested a meeting to discuss settlement. Patricia and I sat on one side of the conference table, Derek and Robert Kane on the other. Derek looked terrible, his suit rumpled, his face drawn. My client is prepared to offer a fair settlement, Kane began. Define fair, Patricia said coolly. Mrs. Winters receives the house, her car, and $200,000. Mr. Winters retains his business, interests, and retirement accounts. I actually laughed. That's less than I'd get in community property split without any of your client's misconduct factored in. Derek finally spoke. Maya, please. Don't destroy me completely. I made mistakes, but I'm still a human being. So was I when you laughed at me in the hospital. His face flushed. I apologize for that. No, Derek, you never did, not once. Patricia slid a document across the table. Our counteroffer. Mrs. Winters receives half of all marital assets, including Mr. Winters' business shares. retirement accounts, and recovered hidden assets. Additionally, she receives $200,000 in compensatory damages for emotional distress and $300,000 in punitive damages for financial fraud. Kane's face went white. That's over $3 million. That's justice, Patricia said. You have 48 hours to respond. We walked out, leaving them sitting in stunned silence. Chapter 15. Marcus's revelation. Marcus called me directly this time, his voice urgent. Maya, I found something else. Derek's been planning something bigger than just hiding assets from you. We met at his office after hours. Marcus pulled up financial projections on his computer screen. Derek was going to force me out of the company, Marcus explained. He'd been documenting fake performance issues, creating a paper trail to justify terminating me without buyout compensation. Once you were divorced and I was gone, he'd own the entire company and have Vanessa as his new business partner. Why would he do that? Control, money, power. The company's about to go public. We're looking at a valuation of $20 million. Derek wanted it all. Marcus pulled out more documents. But here's the beautiful part. Because he embezzled and committed fraud, the board can terminate him with cause. That means he loses his shares, his position, everything. The company bylaws are very clear. What does that mean for you? It means I become majority owner. And it means Derek's biggest asset just vanished. Marcus smiled grimly. He tried to destroy both of us. Now we're going to finish what he started. Chapter 16. The trial date. The trial was set for 6 weeks out. Patricia and her team prepared meticulously, organizing evidence into a narrative that would be impossible to refute. Every cruel text, every hidden account, every lie documented and ready to present. Derek's side scrambled. Kane tried multiple tactics to delay, but the judge denied every motion. The evidence was too strong, the case too clear. I spent those weeks healing. I saw a therapist who specialized in emotional abuse. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. I started painting again, something I'd given up when Derek called it a waste of time. My sister Jade watched me transform. You're different, she said one evening. Stronger. I had to break completely before I could rebuild, I told her. Derek didn't just take my money and my trust. He tried to take my sense of self, but he failed. The miscarriage still hurt. It probably always would. But I'd stopped letting Derek's cruelty poison that grief. I could mourn my baby without his laughter echoing in my memory. I visited the cemetery where I'd buried the ultrasound photo, leaving fresh flowers. I'm fighting for both of us, I whispered. Patricia's witness list was a masterpiece of strategic planning. Marcus would testify about the embezzlement. Dr. Bloom would explain the hidden assets. Vanessa would detail the affair and Derek's lies. My sister would describe my emotional state after the miscarriage. But the most powerful witness would be me. Patricia prepped me for hours. Derek's lawyer will try to paint you as vindictive, as someone seeking revenge rather than justice. We need to show the court who you really are. A woman who endured systematic abuse, who lost a child while her husband laughed, who discovered years of betrayal. I'm ready, I told her. There's one more witness I want to call. Patricia said. Derek's therapist. He has a therapist? Had. He saw Dr. Michelle Santos for 6 months, ending right before he filed for divorce. In Washington, therapist-patient privilege can be waived if the patient puts their mental state at issue. Derek claimed in his filings that you caused him severe emotional distress. So by making that claim, he opened the door. Dr. Santos has agreed to testify about what Derek told her in therapy. I had no idea what Derek might have said, but Patricia's smile suggested it wasn't good for him. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but the weight of it pressed down on me anyway. Derek sat at the defense table looking polished and confident, like he'd convinced himself he could still win. Judge Dubois Rachel Morrison entered, and everyone rose. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Patricia's opening statement was clinical and devastating. She laid out the timeline of abuse, the financial fraud, the affair, and Derek's systematic plan to destroy me, financially and emotionally. Kane's opening tried to paint Derek as a flawed but decent man, pushed to extreme actions by a difficult marriage. Then Patricia called her first witness. Marcus took the stand and methodically explained Derek's embezzlement, providing bank records, emails, and testimony about Derek's confession. Derek's confidence began to crack. Dr. Bloom followed, walking the judge through 2 years of financial deception. She projected documents on a screen, showing money flowing out of joint accounts into hidden places. By lunch, Derek looked pale. Kane kept whispering urgently to him, but Derek just stared at the table. The afternoon brought Vanessa. She cried through her testimony, admitting the affair and explaining how Derek had manipulated her with lies about our marriage. When court adjourned, Patricia squeezed my shoulder. "Tomorrow, you testify." I took the stand wearing a simple blue dress, my hands trembling slightly. Patricia approached with a kind smile. "Mrs. Winters, can you tell the court about September 14th? I took a deep breath and began. I described the cramping that started at work, the blood, the panic, the emergency room, the ultrasound showing no heartbeat, the doctor's gentle voice explaining the miscarriage. I called my husband from the hospital bathroom. I was bleeding, cramping, and I'd just lost our baby. I needed him. What did he say? My voice shook, but I pushed through. He laughed. He said I was being dramatic and that it could wait until tomorrow because he was playing poker with friends. I heard someone in the gallery gasp. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. Patricia let the moment sit before continuing. How did that make you feel? Like I didn't matter? Like our baby didn't matter? Like 6 years of marriage meant nothing? Kane cross-examined me, trying to suggest I was exaggerating or misremembering. But I had the recording. Patricia played it for the court. Derek's laughter filled the room, his dismissive words, his cruelty, undeniable and permanent. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Dr. Michelle Santos took the stand on the third day. She was professional and composed, explaining her credentials, before Patricia began questioning. Dr. Santos, did Derek Winters discuss his marriage during therapy? Yes, extensively. What did he tell you? He said he found his wife boring and clingy. He described feeling trapped in the marriage and wanting to leave but being concerned about the financial implications. Did he mention planning to hide assets? He asked me hypothetical questions about whether it was morally acceptable to protect one's wealth from a spouse who, in his words, hadn't earned it. Did he discuss the miscarriage? Dr. Santos's expression tightened. Yes, he said he'd laughed because he was relieved. He didn't want children with his wife and saw the miscarriage as, quote, a problem solving itself. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison gavelled for silence. I sat frozen, hearing confirmation of what I'd suspected, but hoped wasn't true. Derek had been relieved our baby died. Patricia continued. Did Mr. Winters express remorse for his behaviour? No. He said his wife was too emotional and needed to accept reality. He showed no empathy for her pain. Kane's cross-examination went nowhere. Dr. Santos was unshakable, her notes detailed and clear. Derek's last defense crumbled. Kane made the fatal mistake of putting Derek on the stand. I watched as my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth. Patricia circled, like a shark who'd smelled blood. "Mr. Winters, you testified earlier that you loved your wife. Is that correct?" "Yes, I did love her." "Past tense, when did you stop loving her?" Derek shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know. Things faded over time." "Before or after you started your affair with Miss Chen?" "The affair happened because the marriage was already dead." Patricia pulled out a document. "This is a text message you sent to Maya 3 weeks before you started sleeping with Vanessa. You wrote, 'You're my everything. I can't imagine life without you.' Were you lying then, or are you lying now?" Derek's jaw clenched. "People say things. People lie, you mean?" Patricia didn't wait for an answer. "Mr. Winters, why did you laugh when your wife called from the hospital?" "I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were playing poker, not at a bar. Your friends testified you'd had 2 beers over 3 hours. You weren't drunk." "I don't remember exactly." "We have a recording. The court heard your laughter, your mockery, your dismissal of your wife's pain. Were you drunk or cruel?" Derek's face turned red. "She's always been over-dramatic about everything. I thought she was exaggerating. Exaggerating a miscarriage? I didn't know it was that serious." Patricia's voice went cold. "Your wife said, 'Our baby just died.' What part of that wasn't serious?" Derek had no answer. He sat there, exposed and indefensible. While the judge watched with barely concealed disgust, Judge Morrison took 2 days to review the evidence before issuing her ruling. The courtroom was packed when we returned. I sat next to Patricia, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Across the aisle, Derek looked like he hadn't slept. Judge Morrison entered, and we all rose. She sat, arranged her papers, and began, "I have reviewed the evidence, testimony, and arguments presented in this case. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of marital misconduct I have encountered in my 20 years on the bench." She looked directly at Derek. "Mr. Winters, your behavior throughout your marriage demonstrated a pattern of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and breathtaking cruelty. You systematically isolated your wife from financial independence, belittled her emotions, and planned to leave her destitute while enriching yourself through fraud and deception." Derek's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. "Your actions following your wife's miscarriage were unconscionable. Your affair, your embezzlement, and your attempts to hide assets show a man of profoundly poor character." Judge Morrison outlined her ruling. "I would receive 60% of all marital assets, including Derek's business shares, retirement accounts, and all recovered hidden money. I would receive the house, my car, and $400,000 in additional damages. The total came to just over $4 million. Derek's face went white. "Your Honor, that will bankrupt me." "You should have considered that before committing fraud, Mr. Winters. This court has no sympathy for your situation." The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. I signed the papers in Patricia's office, my hand steady. Derek signed separately, unable to even look at me one final time. Marcus called that same day. The company went public. Our valuation hit $22 million. Your shares are worth about $2 million. What about Derek's criminal charges? He took a plea deal. 2 years probation, full restitution of embezzled funds, and permanent removal from the company. He's finished in the tech industry. Vanessa had left Seattle entirely, taking a job in another state. Derek's mother stopped calling after the verdict. His friends, the ones who'd been at that poker game, vanished from his life when the story went public. Derek lost his company, his reputation, his money, and his future, all because he couldn't show basic human compassion to his wife when she needed him most. I used some of the settlement money to start a foundation supporting women leaving abusive marriages. I named it after the baby I lost, turning that grief into something meaningful. My therapist said I was one of the strongest people she'd ever worked with. Jade said I'd always had that strength. I just needed to find it again. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Derek at a coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible. Thinner, older, defeated. He was wearing cheap clothes and his confident swagger was completely gone. He saw me and froze. For a moment, I thought he might leave. But instead he approached my table. "Maya, can we talk?" I gestured to the empty chair. He sat down slowly, like every movement hurt. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," he began, his voice rough, "for everything. The miscarriage, the affair, the way I treated you. You didn't deserve any of it." "No, I didn't. I lost everything. The company, my money, my reputation. I'm living in a studio apartment and working retail. My own mother won't speak to me." I sip my coffee, waiting. He wanted absolution, forgiveness, some sign that his suffering had earned him redemption. "I think about that phone call every day," he continued. "The hospital, your voice, my laughter. I don't know what was wrong with me. I was a monster." "Yes, you were." Derek's eyes filled with tears. "Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at this broken man who'd once held so much power over me, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. "I forgive myself for staying as long as I did," I said quietly. "That's the only forgiveness that matters." I stood up, gathered my things, and walked away. I didn't look back. 1 year after the divorce, I stood in the gallery where my paintings were being displayed. The collection was called After the Fall, and it showed my journey from darkness into light through abstract pieces that critics called raw and transcendent. The foundation I'd started was helping 15 women leave abusive situations, providing them with legal support, therapy, and financial assistance. Each woman reminded me of who I'd been, scared, hurt, but stronger than she knew. Jade stood beside me, her arm around my shoulders. "Mum and Dad would be so proud of you. I wish they'd lived to see this. They knew who you were. That's why they named you Maya. It means illusion. You spent years trapped in the illusion of a happy marriage, but you broke free." Marcus arrived with his new girlfriend, a kind woman who worked in tech journalism. He'd turned the company into a huge success and credited me with saving it by exposing Derek's fraud. "To new beginnings," Marcus toasted with champagne. I looked around the gallery at the life I'd built from the ashes of my marriage. Derek had tried to destroy me, but he'd actually freed me. The miscarriage still hurt. Some pains never fully heal, but I'd learned to carry that grief without letting it define me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. "I'm on my knees, Maya. Please help me. I have nothing left." It was Derek. I blocked the number and turned back to my celebration. He'd laughed when I cried. Now he was begging on his knees. But his redemption wasn't my responsibility. I'd already won. Not by destroying him, but by rebuilding myself into someone he could never touch again. Someone whole, healed, and free. The girl who'd cried alone in that hospital bathroom was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who'd fought for her dignity, and who'd transformed her pain into power. Derek had underestimated me for 6 years. He'd thought my kindness was weakness, my love was desperation, my forgiveness was foolishness. He'd been wrong about everything. I raised my glass to the paintings on the wall. To the women in my foundation, to my sister standing beside me, and to the future stretching out bright and unwritten. To survival, I said. To victory, Jade corrected. To both, I smiled. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so completely, magnificently yourself that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant. Derek was someone I used to know. Someone who'd taught me hard lessons about trust and self-worth. Someone whose cruelty had ultimately set me free. He'd laughed when I cried, thinking he'd broken me. He never saw me putting myself back together, piece by piece, into something unbreakable. Now he was begging, and I was soaring, and that was the only ending that mattered.